Hello, and thank you for coming with me on this journey this month as we go through the life of Daniel and learn some lessons from him that will not only encourage us, but exhort us. And so join me today for lesson number 1. What is your heart's desire? That question, what is my heart's desire? I believe that this is the most important lesson that we can learn from the life of Daniel, because this lesson here is going to set the stage for all the other lessons that we are going to talk about. And if you know the life of Daniel and you have studied or looked at the life of Daniel, you will see that this question, this decision that he makes is going to go all throughout the book of Daniel. And so what is the most important thing that we see in Daniel's life? What is the most important thing that we see in the book of Daniel? And I believe it is this lesson here that Daniel chooses when he answers that question of what his heart's desire is. So, for me to help set the stage, I want to talk about what is going on here in the book of Daniel. Of course, the one word that I will mention is that of exile, because God's children have been disobedient to God, because they have not listened to God. God said, I am going to punish you. I am going to allow you to see the error of your ways. I'm going to allow you to be judged because of your sin. And it wasn't too late for Israel. All they had to do was turn back to God. And they made a continual pattern of this. They chose kings, they chose idols, they chose nations. And then when they got in trouble, they would go back to God and then leave God again. And yet, God continually warned them and exhorted them, come back to me, draw closer to me. And yet they didn't do it. And so, God allows the nation of Babylon, to come in and take over Jerusalem. And then the Israelites are taken away from there. And so we come here at the beginning to where we see that. And there's 4 boys in here that are noted. 4 boys who the king had said, I want some boys, some teenagers even, from Israel, so that I can train them in the ways of Babylon. And so there were 4 boys. Their names, their Babylonian names, because they were changed, was Daniel, which his Babylonian name would have been changed to Belteshazzar. But then the other 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so they come to this point here. Daniel comes to this point where he is going to have to make a choice. He's going to have to make a choice to eat of the king's meat. And you may say that's a very, very small thing in desire, because sure, I would desire food, but this was food that Daniel could not eat, because it was, as the law said, it was unholy. It was food that it was commanded not to eat, because it was unholy. But the king had ordered for Daniel and his friends to eat this food. And yet here's what the Bible says about that. Verse 8, the most important verse, I believe, in the book of Daniel. chapter 1 and verse 8 says this: "But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself." I want you to listen to those first few words. Daniel purposed with his heart. Daniel purposed it with his heart. Now, know this. He was going to be defying a king. He was going to be defying a king that kidnapped him from his home, that took him from his home. Defying the king means death. Defying the king means punishment. Defying the king was a very, very bad thing. It would have been just easy to give in. It would have been easy to just eat the meat, to just sit there and say, well, okay, I'm going to eat. But this verse says that Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself. Why? Because he knew the food was unholy. Because he knew what God had said. He knew what God had commanded. And so this lesson here, that Daniel would not defile himself, is a lesson that's going to follow him throughout the entire book. And the one reason that Daniel knew this, his name is interesting. His name actually means God is my judge. And so even as he was taken away from his homeland, he still had a close connection with God. He still had a close relationship with God, to where he knew that he was living for so much more than what he is living for now. Daniel had already purposed in his heart when he was in Jerusalem. And even in a pagan land, Daniel was continuing to make that same decision. And so you may say, purpose with your heart. Even over some food, it seems like a very small decision. Well, today, I don't know what decision it is that you're making. I don't know what decision, whether small or big, that you will be making today. But can I ask you, if I were to ask you that question, what is your heart's desire? Is your heart's desire to follow God? Is your heart's desire to chase after Him? To live for Him? To make Him known among others? To have your life be a reflection of the life that God will have you to live, that God commands you to live? For Daniel, that was his purpose. And in every decision that Daniel made, he wanted to make sure that he knew that he was living for God, the one who would judge him one day. And so again, that decision that Daniel made is going to follow him throughout the entire book. And as this decision follows Daniel throughout the entire book, this decision is also going to follow you in your entire life. Are you going to purpose in your heart that you are going to live for God? And Daniel is actually going to show us throughout this entire book that you can live for God, even in a world that is chaotic and in a world that is falling apart. Daniel purposed in his heart. And that is the first lesson that I want us to see as we go through the book of Daniel. Daniel purposed in his heart. What will be your decision when you purpose in your heart to live for God in a world that is not living for Him? What will you do today?
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and share if this video encouraged you. And to see more encouraging videos and posts, subscribe to my channel and follow me on social. See you guys next time.